Can I show you guys my roses that are blooming right now?
No. Yeah.
This is my backyard here.
All right, all right.
Oh, wow.
I have these roses they're just fully blooming now.
Whoa. Beautiful.
Oh,
Right there.
beautiful.
And these daisies they appeared as a weed, but these
Oh,
are the roses here.
very nice. Very beautiful.
But then they get attacked by aphids, and then the roses disappear after that.
Yeah, what you have in the pots there?
I think it's mandevilla. I just made these planters.
Okay.
All
very
right.
nice. Yeah. You're a good boy.
And you see those flowers on that deck over there?
Yeah.
They're dried up from last year. So what I did, I spray painted them so they look like flowers.
Very innovative, Mark.
I had a girlfriend that did that. She used to buy like fake flowers to put in on her porch in the planters. Driving by you, she said you couldn't tell the difference. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start the recording. So Heather's hosting the session today. So she will start. One moment, Heather. Hi, welcome to Poetry and Prose. It is Sunday, June 8th, 2025. This is our open mic and discussion meeting. We have our beautiful host, Heather. Heather, thank you so much for chairing today. And the floor is all yours.
Well, thank you very much, Gersha. I know you have to go off to work. And so thank you for getting us started. And welcome, everybody. It's been a while since we sat around to share some of our work and discuss. We have a number of readers, and I guess we didn't really do formal listing of readers, but I'd be willing to introduce whoever would love to start. I know that I told Althea that I might put her on the top of the list because it's her supper time in Switzerland. Would you like to go first, Althea?
Okay. I'm going to read a story which is an oral tale which I have put into writing, and so I've had to use my imagination to fill in bits and pieces. So it's a story that my father used to tell us. My father was a very good storyteller, and in the evening he would tell us different stories. Some of them were folk tales, and some of them are tales like this one, which was passed on from West Africa to the Caribbean and told from generation to generation. So the story is called All Me Woman Friends Turn to Man. And I was thinking, now that I'm adult, I'm thinking, wow, this was not really an appropriate story for children to listen to, but it's a story that we were told as children. So here we go. All my women friends turn to man. Gladys and Ernest Hubbard lived in a tiny village on a small habited by farmers, fishermen, and smugglers. muscular Ernest Hubbard had a reputation for being the village's strongman. No one ever challenged him to a fight. He had lost his first wife and child 10 years ago during her childbirth and had taken a long time to overcome this terrible fate. He was hardworking and had left home early to drive his cattle to pasture. At his land on the outskirts of the village, he looked after the few cattle that he kept for milk and sold for meat at Christmas. He surveyed the cattle that he kept for milk. He surveyed the cattle in the shed and saw to it that they had enough grass to eat. He inspected his cotton plants for boll weevils, bollworms, grasshoppers, and other insects that persisted in cheating him of his hard labor. He tended his other crops, which included papaya, yam, edos, and pigeon peas. He also grew bananas, plantain, pineapples, in addition to vegetables, and hired workers during harvest time when needed. He was often away all day selling his produce and occasionally went out to sea to catch fish with his village mates on Saturdays. His new wife, Hyacinth, was one of the village harvest. She was one of the most beautiful women in the village and was 20 years younger than Ernest. She had come from a family of 12. Her parents, because of their numerous children, had struggled to feed and clothe them. It was God's will and a blessing to have a child every year, they said. But they were happy when Ernest offered to take Hyacinth off their hands. Hyacinth had gladly married Ernest to escape the chaos and daily struggles faced by her large family. She was a good wife. Hyacinth fixed Ernest a hearty, varied breakfast. He had a big choice of smoked fish, green bananas, roast breadfruit or cornmeal, arrowroot, Tanya porridge, or farina pop, and bakes before he left for the farm at 5 a.m. At midday, she brought him his lunch. Hyacinth prepared him various dishes that included stew mutton and green bananas, or cornmeal dumplings in a thick pot of pea soup, dukana, and saltfish. After a big lunch, Ernest always drank water from a large jug Hyacinth brought to help him wash the food down. Hyacinth was a firm believer in the sayings, the way to a man's heart was through his stomach, and that a hungry man is an angry man. Hyacinth kept Ernest contented, but she became bored and restless, staying at home 6 days a week. Most Sundays, Ernest slept all day after church service. After a hard day's work, Ernest always stopped at one of the local rum shops on his way home at night. There he would drink, play dominoes, and gossip. Rumors of strange men visiting his house in his absence buzzed on and off. At first, he put the rumors down to jealousy, but the rumors gnawed at him. So one day, he decided to put an end to them. He chose the following Wednesday. On this day, Hyacinth's first suitor, Norbert, arrived at 9 a.m. She had time between preparing breakfast and lunch to entertain him. She had all the provisions and ingredients she needed. There was dried and smoked salt beef hanging in the roof in the kitchen outside, and salt fish stored in a wooden crate. She warmly hugged Norbert, who came from a nearby village, and returned to the table where she was preparing a meal for lunch. He watched her slender fingers covered with flour roll and flatten dough to form dumplings. Norbert's eyes skirted her tall, dark limbs that glistened with coconut oil. She paused, washed her hands, and uncovered a plate of warm saltfish gravy and dumplings. He dug into the gravy while she prepared more dumplings and was wiping the saltfish gravy that rimmed his mouth when someone knocked on the door. Quick, quick, hide under the bed, Norbert, gasped Hyacinth. I wonder who that. Norbert dived onto the floor and rolled under the bed like a combatant, and was safely out of sight by the time Hyacinth opened the door. Oh, hello, Leroy. I wasn't expecting you today. She pressed her hand to her chest to control its heaving. Come in. I was in the area and keys rattled in the keyhole. Jesus, Leroy, hide in the barrel. I think it's my husband. Leroy jumped nimbly into the large wooden barrel standing next to the door, and Hyacinth clamped the lid shut. The door burst open, and in marched Ernest, snorting and puffing. He surveyed the room, and his eyes soon lit upon the greasy plate of unfinished saltfish and dumplings. Grunting, he shook his head and glared at his wife. Ernest, what you doing back home? Stuttered Hyacinth. I forget something. You forget something? You deaf, Gladys? No, it's just that you don't usually come home mid-morning. I's your husband. I can come home anytime I want. You eating lunch early. I feeling peckish. And another knock on the door interrupted their conversation. Hyacinth jerked. You're not going to get the door, woman? Hyacinth ran to it and flung it open. Oh, it's you, Mr. Goodwin. I wasn't expecting you till afternoon. Ernest, This is Mr. Goodwin. He come to take the barrel. It's leaking. You didn't tell me that, grumbled Ernest. I forgot to tell you. Mr. Goodwin, there's the barrel, said Hyacinth, pointing near the door. Mr. Goodwin grabbed the barrel and tried to lift it. What you got in here, stone? He giggled Gladys. I forgot to take the wood out. Now hurry up. I ain't got all day. I have to tend to my husband. Go on, go. There was no time to squabble. So Mr. Goodwin, struggling and straining, heaved the barrel onto his head and staggered out the door. Not far from the Hubbards' house, Mr. Goodwin was still wobbling and stumbling along when a gravelly voice in the barrel shouted, Lord God, that was a close call. What the devil? Mr. Goodwin, terrified, dropped the barrel and fled screaming. Jumby, Jumby in the barrel! It rolled a short distance and crashed against a rock. A dead, cried Leroy as he climbed out of the splintered barrel and limped away groaning and checking his body for broken bones. Back at the house, tears were steaming down Gladys's face. Ernest, I get some terrible news this morning. Gladys, is not the end of the world, Ernest grunted. The world is really coming to an end, Ernest, bawled Gladys. All my woman friends turn to man. Come see for yourself. One hiding under the bed right now. She didn't know where to turn. It's a terrible thing, Ernest, a terrible thing. Ernest dashed to the bedroom, searched under the bed, and grabbing a pair of legs, he pulled Norbert out. What is? Yelled Ernest, raising his hands in the air. A what is? Gladys, who followed, shrieked. You see what I tell you, Ernest? You see what I tell you? All my woman friends done turn to man. And that's how the story ended. There is no part two, so we don't know what happened to Gladys after that. So maybe somewhere on another island there's a part two to this story. And I don't know if any of you ever heard this story. I'd be interested to hear if you've heard of some version of this story. Okay.
I haven't, Althea, but I'll tell you, as you read my work, you will see a lot of that kind of thing in my little
Okay.
short stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very amusing story, very entertaining.
Thank you.
Paul King's
We-
Douglas told an anecdote, not something along the same lines.
Okay.
Yeah, where she asked him to fix some things at home, and he said, "What do you take me for, a tailor? A carpenter?" And
Mhm.
the next day he came back, and everything was fixed. And he said, "What happened?" And she said, "Well, Georgie passed by, and he fixed everything." And he said, "How much did he charge?" He said, "She didn't charge anything." He said, "Either I can bake him a cake or go to bed with him." He said, "Well, what kind of cake did you bake him?" And she said, "Well,
Mhm.
you take me for a baker?"
Okay.
You know, Althea, I read this story via the email you sent for Gushan, and it reminded me, I read something similar to that. But there was a
Yeah.
calypso in Trinidad by a guy called Zandoli. He's from
Mhm.
Rio Claro, and in which he is saying that his wife, she only have man friend.
Yeah.
Okay, and you
Okay.
know that this one
Yeah.
is your uncle, and that is your cousin, and that is your
Yeah.
whatever it is. So in the calypso, he's telling her,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't have no woman friend, but um, he says like this. Look, I want you to write down your family name. Look, I want you to write down all your family name in a piece of paper for me. He still have well, write all your male relatives
Yeah.
so I could know that they I think it's a nice calypso. If you go on Sandoli, Trinidad, Zandoli is the
Okay.
calypsonian name. You could
Oh,
listen to the
okay.
calypso.
Yeah.
Very, very nice beginning to our program today. Gershia will go next with her offering because she has to leave to go to work. But in the meantime, we have welcomed June, Alicia, and Leanne is a new visitor, just observing today. And I must say that she's the founder of Glamorize Magazine, and it's an exciting new Caribbean publication that will feature design, art, fashion, film, and music. And so she is a writer as well. So maybe she'll get some ideas from us and we can get some ideas from her at a later date. So let's proceed with Gersha.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I have a lot of poems to share. I have a few poems to share, but my poems are usually short. So bear with me. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll start. First one is happiness. I searched for you in clouds of smoke, in between rhythms and beats that vibrated my bones. Under compliments that fluttered like butterflies, I was unable to clasp. I devoured your sweetness that melted on my tongue like cotton candy. It never lasted long. I searched for you in pages, a mystery to solve. Still, you eluded me, always afoot. Once, when I was not looking, my mind was of mind alone, my stomach neither full nor empty. The world was neither hell nor home. There you were, walking beside me. Where have you been? I asked. In your mind, and your mind alone, you answered. That's happiness. I don't know if I should pause for comments or if I should just bolt ahead. Heather? Oh,
You go ahead,
Okay.
Gersha, yeah, at your convenience, yeah, because I know you're the one that has to leave for work.
yeah, I have to sign in at least by 1:45. Okay.
Okay.
Perseverance is my second piece. Tupac spoke of a rose that grew from concrete. When skyscrapers were my playground, before I was told potential had an expiration date. Long ago, long after, I soured from time and clumped from rejection. I saw a flower growing out of a manhole, the cover more valuable as scrap metal for a fiend needing a fix than protection for some undeserving soul. White flowers clustered, warning, yellow kissed, center bright under the Caribbean sun. This manhole busy blooming, walk around. The Trinidadian heat drank its water, leaves limp and blowing in the breeze from the passing cars. Not thriving, but surviving. Not where I want to be, not knowing how long I will stay. But happiness reclaimed in darkness, never meant for me. And this one's in honor of Father's Day, the next two. It's called Father's Ritual. After the 7 o'clock news, my father sits in the backyard taking breeze. This island's act of contrition, the Caribbean evening penance for the sun. He sits on our old wrought iron gallery chairs, he claimed as his from my mother. He sits with friends when I'm imprisoned to a darkened room, but I can hear their murmurs. Just stopping by like moths, they saw the light on, except the backyard lights are off. If I peek through the blinds, I can see shadows from the glow of our kitchen light. Men sitting with my father in a half circle, glasses in hand. I like it when Uncle Robert visits. He talks the loudest and tells jokes. I cover my mouth and laugh with them. In secret, in darkness, the mosquitoes fearing the hand. At times, my father sits alone. If I close my eyes and listen, beyond the soundtrack, all mothers play. I hear the ice in his glass, ching. I hear him whistle to the wind. And, actually I have 5, but I'll come back to that one. This one I wrote recently, and it's about father. I always like to write something on Father's Day about a father, because I have a lot of friends that grew up without their dads. So I always like to honor them for Father's Day. I met my father at 54. This is actually my coworker's story. I met my father at 54. He walks with a limp. My mother said nothing when I told her. He said she took me to Canada, and that's why he's been away. We came back when I was 6. She didn't say, but I saw it in the squint of her eyes. I saw him once on my way to Bishop's. He slowed down to say hi, gave me $10 and a ride to school. She puckered her lips and let out a long stoops then. He gave me $10,000 to put towards my mortgage. He said he has me on his life insurance, the daughter he never knew. He visits now, limping up to the 2nd floor. I know he takes his coffee black, and he never liked condensed milk. When he was young, his mother beat him bad, after catching him in the fridge with a can to his lips. I'm learning a part of myself I never knew. And the very last poem is called Working Class Revenge. She danced in the moonlight, skin soft and cooling, dew on the dogwood pooling, glistening like eyes pleading. Melody is a sonata of a heart beating. Dirt under grayish blue nails, pretty feet dragging, lifting, pulling close, hardening under clothes, iris and cedar infused hair, hazy eyes of a true lover's stare. And the last poem is just because I like it. I like it, but I wrote that one a really long time ago. So some of them are new, some of them are old. And thank you for listening to my shares.
Thank you, Gersha. Very nice. I actually, the line that jumps out at me is penance for the sun. I think that's genius.
I listened to your poem on perseverance, and that line that potential has an expiry date is a very deep line, because when I think about person persevering, there isn't really, you go the distance. There isn't really an expiry date to your potential. That's very interesting. Like your piece about your father's rituals and it's filled with imagery. There's a lot of songs and, things you hear and see, and you're there laughing in the dark, covering your mouth. So very, very interesting pieces.
Thank you. Hi, Olivia. Perseverance with the expiration date. It's because it's a personal piece for me because when I was younger, I wrote, and there was always these workshops. I've been published in the Boston Globe. I've been on an NPR in Boston, a radio show, at Teachers Support. And I think like after college and then you get out into the real world and you get a job, it's almost as though you go from having this support of as a writer of people telling you you can do it to now being a creative trying to figure out how to get paid to do the work that you love. So that's where that came from. I hope that helps.
Yeah, very, very,
Oh.
that's what I said. Very, yeah, very deep.
Thanks. Thanks.
Althea has a comment there. Althea?
Yeah, about that same potential has an expiration date. I found it to be a bit of a contradiction, like the last speaker, a contradiction to that lone flower that is blooming despite the negative conditions. So it kind of negates the potential has an expiration date or balances out. So it doesn't have an expiration date if you are determined to succeed no matter what. So I'm agreeing with the last speaker. One of my favorite of the group too was about the absent father who has come back into the life of the woman. And one of my favorite lines is that she's learning about part of herself that she never knew, because the father is a part of her, you know. It's something that's there. You can't get rid of it. It's always there. So, okay, that's it from me.
Thanks,
Thank
Althea.
you,
That's
Motilal.
actually a true story. My coworker, she met her dad when they were little. Her parents split up. Her mom went to Canada. They stayed for a few years. They came back, and then she met her dad again. But she was much older. She's like in her 50s, and she would, tell us like when she met him, she was so excited. And then he invited her to a family function and she went, but she was very nervous to be meeting this side of her family. And so yeah, that she inspired that piece.
Motilal, you had a point to make? Oh, you have to unmute.
Yeah. One of the pieces that struck me is a poem about the absentee father. And last week we had some incident of school children, schoolgirls violence, schoolgirls fighting in school. And in today's newspaper, there was one of the fathers who was talking about that. And what he was saying is that the fight was, I think, between his daughter and his stepdaughter. They were involved in this violence in school. And he was talking about the difficulty with children coping and with absentee parents or single parent. So I just wanted to, to say that this whole idea about the absentee father in a home has serious repercussions, because the children sometimes they unable to cope. And when you have the parents still fighting long after the divorce or whatever, it affects the children. So that piece about absentee father, I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, I enjoy well, not enjoy, but hearing about her story. Like, she always knew she had a dad. She knows him, but she like he never did anything for her. Like, I mean, he would see her because the Trinidad's small, so she would see him ever so often, and he would always ask her, "Oh, how you doing? Where you going?" One time, he gave her some money to go to the movies because she was on her way to the movies. So, like, whenever he saw her, he would give her like a little bit of change or some trinket, you know. But that's why I included the mother's reaction, because I think he did nothing else other than that, you know.
Any other comments? Well, Motilal, would you like to read next? Are you prepared?
No problem,
Okay.
Heather, no problem. My piece is called Glimpses of My Father. When I was about 11, I asked my mother why we were living far away from my grandmother while our cousins were living near her. She said that my grandfather Bap was vexed with my father Bim Singh because he had disobeyed him in getting married to my mother. He knew that his father had other plans, as he had hinted that Bhim should marry Kamin, the daughter of his friend Rup Singh, who was a rich man and would help the couple build a house. Kamin was a nice girl, but Bhim Singh was too smitten with my mother Raju, whom he had met while working at the Bakal Bus Company. He was not given any land by his father, and so he moved out of the village. When Raju's brother Mak and some elders from Raju's village came to speak with Bab, he was unshakable. No permission could be got from him. When Bhim Singh attained the age of 21, he could do what he wanted. Mak decided to seek the help of Mr. Rat. Many a time when the father of a prospective groom did not agree to a wedding, Mr. Rat would turn up at the warden's office and claim to be the groom's father if the groom was under 21. The warden once asked him how many sons he had. My parents got married at the superior warden's office. They did not have a traditional Hindu wedding. I remember my father taking my mother, sisters, and me for drives. He had bought his own car, a blue Ford Zephyr. He took us to the beach, the zoo, to see the Diwali lights at Aranguez, the lookout on the Lady Young Road, and the upside down Hilton Hotel. I loved for him to drive fast and would ask him to pass the cars in front of us. Sure, he would say, this is a Zephyr, that is a console, as he overtook with his high air-powered car. Once he was teaching my mother to drive. Keep the bird in the center of the road, he instructed. The bird being an ornament on the bonnet of the car. My mother kept the bird in the center of the road, even when another car was approaching from the opposite direction. We screamed as my father quickly pulled the steering and the car ended up in the drain. Driving lessons abruptly ended for that day. My father dressed well when he went to work as a taxi driver. Well-pressed khaki pants and white shirt, and Dunlop white crepe sole shoes, the ones with the sponge lining to keep your feet comfortable. On the shelving under the dashboard, he kept a half-pound key pan for the coins he received. When he received $1, he put those in his pants pocket as he gave change. Every morning, he started working with the pan a quarter full after giving my mother most of the previous day takings to run the house. My father rarely disciplined us. This was left mostly to our mother, who would say to us, "Wait till your father gets home." He wore a broad leather belt. I remember getting two when I was in standard 3. He was checking my homework and there were several red X's. The girls never got licks. And I can remember this one time only. I inherited that belt, which I wear to this day. I cannot remember my father saying, "I love you." But he attended our school concerts, permitted us to go on school outings, took us to sport meetings, and bought presents for birthdays and Christmas. When my parents started to build our new home, the money soon ran out. We had 3 rooms upstairs and a makeshift kitchen downstairs with no doors and windows for the living room. My mother was determined that we move in before Christmas 1964. We could use the boards from the old house to build an upstairs kitchen and complete the house. For the next 2 years, my father would work to complete our home bit by bit. My father gave us room to grow. He left the taxi driving business to work with a contractor at the refinery. He worked long hours, leaving home at 5:30 a.m. and returning at about 5:30 p.m. Sometimes in the morning, if my mother was not finished cooking, I will go next door and ask Polly's mother for 2 roti, which Ma would give her back later. On his return from work, after a bath and dinner, my father would sit in the hammock downstairs with his dog, Scotty, until bedtime. I got a job as a learner refinery operator. We had an Austin Cambridge which I was allowed to drive, taking my father and 2 neighbors to work. I had a girlfriend who worked at Chanka's Hardware in Duncan Village. I picked her up after work. My father would go in the back seat, allowing her to sit in front. Sometimes the girlfriend would leave for home early on Fridays, leaving my father and his friend in the car. Once we stopped at Cidial's bar for a drink. Bob, one of the neighbors, ordered a half a Eclipse and a Pepsi and a stout for the boy, meaning me. My father said, "Stout for the boy? Bring a glass." He feel a those smelly mouth with rum when he come home from lineman up the road. When I had an African girlfriend, my mother wasn't too pleased. My father reminded her, "It takes sun and rain to make rainbow." He also made a ribald remark, saying, "All cat black in the night," which didn't quite amuse my mother. I recall when my father borrowed my car once and returned without it. He had one too many. I found he had left its keys in the ignition at Charlie's shop and gone with other friends on a drinking line. Sometimes as we get older, we think that we are smarter than our fathers. I learned a valuable lesson. I took my car for repairs and the mechanic brought it home afterwards. Next morning, I had to take my mother to the market. There was a knock from the engine, and my father advised me not to drive the car as it seemed that the mechanic had left something loose. I ignored him and paid the expensive price of extensive repairs. One incident that made me proud was when I saw my father reading with the Ramayana group at a neighbor's house. I never imagined he could read Hindi, much less translate the teachings. I wish that I had taken the time to learn more about my father. God bless you, Papa. Thank you.
Very good, Motilal. Always enjoy your stories. Nice tribute for Father's Day for your father. I know he used to drive
You know,
taxi with Kelvin, father there, Popo Sign.
yeah, we know Mr. Gosain, and he had this yellowish Vauxhall.
Yeah.
That's your uncle, you know. We used to say that he was the slowest driver in from Pinal.
Well, he used to hold up traffic here on the 401 in Toronto, you know. They had to take away the car from him.
But you know that your neighbor, Mr. Rat,
Yeah.
he used to you know, like sometimes people want to get married and they have some disagreement with their father or something. Mr. Rat used to go to the warden office and say, "Well, I see father, you know."
I wonder what Madam Rat thought of that.
Yeah.
Any
Okay, that's my
comments?
That's interesting, eh? Yeah, where you would have elders in the community that just helped out other people. Yeah, and you had that happening quite a bit. As he said that about, and you were also alluding to it, Heather, about the driving. Long ago, you know, we used to say that the person only vehicle only had 2 speed, slow and stop. You know, so
You know, here in Canada, we have speed limits, but if you go too slow, the police will stop you just as much as if you go too fast. So you could get a case
exactly.
for driving too slow
That's
because
right.
you're
That's
holding up everybody else.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he probably had 2 speed, slow and stop.
Well, we could probably, Krishna, do you have something to contribute to us today? I don't know if Krishna is available.
Yeah, what happens? I've seen unstable connection and that getting. Yes, I could read something, no problem. What about the others? Others who
Well, Alicia has 2 pieces, and June, do you have anything for today?
Krishna, if you try to take off your video, that should help with your connection.
well, that's it. That's why I have the video off. Yes. Yeah. So I noticed it freezing a couple of times, and I'm getting the message. Your internet has unstable connection. What the hell? Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, if you want me to read, I could read my pieces. It's from the Song of a Barefoot Soul.
okay.
Of a Barefoot Soul, right? So, my father appears in it, so I will read it as for Father's Day. This is segment 52 of 130 pieces. It's one poem, one song, one sentence, begins with capital I and it ends with a full stop at the last page, 211. So this piece is called, this segment is called We Clung to Roots. So again, Clint, we clung to roots. All right. We clung to roots. It is a grotesque mask that failure wears. Its mood is melancholic. In this state, nothing matters. Nothing can lift the mind. But time, the true healer, works its magic. To see these lines in the flesh delighted the mind. She twirled and sang high-pitched with joy, throughout her whole body radiating. Lances of shame mortified me. I was engaged in engraving their epitaphs. She was seraphic. The line lived through her. She remembered him. So that's where the Father comes in now. She remembered him in his festive state. In family jokes, he resurrected. Such penetration in our psyches was disturbing. How much a father meant. Absent, his loss caused her to lose control. Midway in a test, trinkets can bring tears. He said it was high time I get my house in order. The boys were becoming men. There once was a barefooted boy who trudged clumsily along in a line that bent around a corner to a flight of steps. Down it went from the road to the front door in a shape that was not well constructed. Someone could break his back walking down these, she said, as her frame distorted with each descent. He said, that is temporary. That was added as a family joke. Every odd structure was temporary. A pillar leaning was temporary. A shelf capsized under the weight of pots. Merely because it was temporary. The crudely built roof was temporary. The dream was to cast concrete on the top. We waited with the hope of moving out of this quarter that was temporary. For almost a decade now, it recalled a man waiting for the world to take shape, while dreams, one by one, were sliding away. We clung to roots whose fibers were snapping one by one. The lines emerged like demons from a brain, like the exorcised legion. And that is from Martin Samaro.
Wow.
Died at 57.
Beautiful, Krishna. Very nice. I
Yeah.
always like the rhyming couplet at the end of your work.
Well, this piece, I didn't use rhyme because that would have been a bigger challenge to use rhyme. But this, you see, like Walcott, unlike Walcott used rhyme. Oh Lord, Walcott is a genius. Yeah, you can't match with him. A man using line, alternate lines, right? When you check Homeros, when you check Theopolo's Hound, can't imagine. So to use rhyme in this, it was a challenge. So it was blank verse, so we call blank verse, right?
Yeah.
Which is what like Milton and them use in Paradise Lost, and what Shakespeare would use sometimes. Blank verse. So it's 10 syllables per line, like the iambic pentameter. But even that, I didn't use iambic pentameter. I just used syllabic, what they call syllabic verses, 10 syllables. Again, to use iambic pentameter, that is also another challenge when you're writing poetry. So two things there. Well, Althea would recognize all of these things. to write in iambic pentameter and then to rhyme, either rhyming alternately or rhyming in another way, right? So this is, it's not free verse, and I use a limited kind of stream of consciousness or free association, a limited use of it, where I am talking about one thing and then I go to the next and then I go to the next. And I free associate.
Yeah.
Oh.
Effective though, effective and very much of your style.
Oh yes, one more thing. So I like this book. I mean, it's my book. I like it. I wrote it in 2000. That's 25 years ago. And
Really?
the subject matter covers, when I read A House of Mr. Knight, A House of Mr. Bisworth, and I say A House of Mr. Knight, but A House of Mr. Bisworth. And he reached where the Indians had arrived in the city. And my family lived in the city, the suburb, Belmont. And going to university and things, I had to write that novel, a post-Biswas novel, you know, right? About Indians now, how they fared in the city, because I saw it firsthand. But I couldn't write it because it was too personal. I had to hide it. I hid it in coded language. So I talked about is a number of families. It's about 5 families, plus myself as a nuclear family. So I have those lines. I have those lines in this book. The stories and narratives. So I could not write a novel, and I will not write a novel, a post-Biswas novel. It's too personal. Yeah. Okay, that's my bit. Thank you. I see the
Thank you, Krishna. Thank you
internet-
very much.
Thanks, Krishna. I just want to say, I bought a book because of you yesterday. Anthony Joseph, Sonnets for Albert, and I said, "Oh my gosh, another book."
Actually, I think that that sonnets won the poetry section.
Yeah, the T.S. Eliot Prize 2022.
But also the Booker.
Oh, I don't. Probably.
listed.
But
Yes,
I
and I
saw
don't-
it, and I also saw Jerry's book yesterday as well, but I couldn't get both. So, but I wanted to see what his showing would be like, and I had thought of your book as well.
You got his sonnets. You have my sonnets. You get
Your
my
sonnet
sonnets.
is in my.
Rumination.
Your sonnet is in my.
70 sonnets, 70.
Yeah.
That is to
Your
commemorate that.
sonnet is in my
Yeah.
Amazon cart, waiting to see what's going on with these tariffs.
Yeah. Okay.
So my Amazon cart is probably about $500 now.
All right, Gush.
Well,
Thanks.
if there are no other comments, Frank, do you have an offering for us today?
No, I will have that poem you were referring to. I have some changes to make, so at a future date.
I don't want to press you into doing anything, but no, I was just wondering if you had anything else, but because I'm just going down the list. I think Alicia has a couple of Father's Day poems. So are you all set to go, Alicia?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, we'll
All right. I have 2 pieces. One is entitled The Beauty of a Daddy, and the other is The Absent Father. No, not the absent, the missing father. I also have a piece called The Absent Father, but I don't think I will do that piece. So, The Beauty of a Daddy. He was there when you entered this world and held you in his hand. He makes you feel that you're special, even if you're just playing in the sand. He's there to listen to your hurts, even though he sometimes doesn't understand that your heart is breaking over that boy or girl with whom you had great plans. You call him daddy because father sounds so formal, and he's more of a daddy than what's often the usual. the usual man who plants a seed but leaves before your arrival. And so the beauty of your daddy is he's around, and that makes him special. He taught you how to ride a bike and how to throw a ball. He picked you up and kissed your wounds when you took a fall. He took the time to know your likes, regardless how big or small, and was always ready to display you proudly to one and all. He showed you how to catch a fish and how to trap a crab, and helped you pick the best mangoes with a single grab. He took you to your favorite places when you were feeling drab, and tickled you to laugh so hard or to quiet your endless blab. One look from him makes you know that he isn't pleased with what you do, and it makes you want to hide your face or sink into your shoe. But he forgives your idiosyncrasies and encourages you to pursue excellence in all things so you can be the best version of you. He's the priest of the household and guided you to pray to your heavenly Father each and every day. He reminds you daily to go to him even if you have nothing to say, and just bask in his presence because he loves you everlastingly. He demonstrates the greatest love in how he treats your mother, and you are happy that he is your dad since you would want no other. You love him with all your heart and won't trade him for another, because this daddy is by far the greatest father. So celebrate your daddy as he shows his wholesome beauty, not just in what he says, but in fulfilling his every duty. He gives and gives as his love overflows so selflessly, and you know you can rely on him because he is your daddy. That, in a nutshell, is the beauty of a daddy. So that's the first piece. And the other one is the missing father. I entered this world because you donated your sperm. And for my mother, it may have been an unwanted germ. Rather than abort me, she brought me to full term. And the doctors and midwives did a live child confirm. Every year for Father's Day, I joyfully made a card, thinking that your face I'll see outside my yard. But sadly, I never did, and that made it so hard to understand the songs sung by some happy bard. Songs that spoke of fathers and the love they share. Songs that told me of loving hands that care. Songs that made me want to shed a tear, because in my world there was no father there. Talking to my mother was a waste of time, since she didn't have a clue where you removed your grime. She never relied on you for a dollar or a dime, and so her excuses sounded like old talk and rhyme. Were you just a passing ship drifting in the night, one that honked its horn and blinked its lofty light? How is it that you could leave without a backward sight? And why am I the one to suffer for your lover's fight? I have never seen your face, never called your name, and I write deceased because your name, beside your name, to often hide the shame that I don't know who my father is, and I cannot claim that he was there to take me to a ball game. I used to fantasize about what I would say to you if one day you would visit just out of the blue. I had this list of things that I wanted us to do, but it was all a mindless dream that never came true. One day we went to look for you, and someone said you died. And since you were unknown to me, I never even cried. Because to me, you were dead before the fetus became a child, since I've always lived my life without a daddy by my side.
Thank you so much, Alicia. I noticed a contrast in both your poems,
Yeah.
but you also managed, like Krishna talked about rhyming, to rhyme. So
Yes. I tend to, most of the time, if I write a piece, even though I've done free verses and that kind of thing and the spoken word aspect of it, but often my poetry tend to rhyme. I'm traditional in that way.
Both pieces are touching, quite touching, and it draws you in because of how solemn it is. I enjoyed listening to both.
Thank you.
Okay.
go ahead, Althea.
Yeah, I have a question. Do the two poems address the same person, Or are you talking about two different father figures here?
It's actually two different father
Okay.
figures. The first one
Okay.
is like what I would envision the ideal father to be like,
Okay.
and based on
Yeah.
how, you know, persons would speak who have these beautiful relationships with their fathers. And the other one, of course, would have also kind of pulled it from my own experience. I would have grown up with a single mother. I never knew my father.
Yeah.
So, you know, so the second one
Okay.
would have pulled a bit from my experience as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well,
I enjoyed both of them.
I did as well.
Thank
I
you.
found the juxtaposition very interesting. You know, the way it should be, would have been, could have been, and so much of, you know, the what was reality, I guess, for many people. So thank you so
Interestingly,
much.
I have never written a poem about father. So this is the first this year I would have done, and I did one of them this morning. So
Oh,
yeah, I have never written about fathers. I don't I suppose maybe it's because of my experience, but I've never written a piece
mhm.
about fathers. So this is a first for me.
And very good for you know, just since this morning.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now I wonder if Cynthia, are you there or not there or what?
I am both here and still the tennis is continuing. So I'm still in the two places, but I don't have anything that came to mind for today. So
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Just pleased to have you anyway.
I'm at
What?
in Paris.
Well, thanks for dropping in anyway. But
No,
well,
it's been good because I've enjoyed the presentations. You
very
know,
good.
lovely, lovely presentations.
Yeah. June, do you have anything to add to our program for today? I don't know if she's at her computer at present. Anyway, I have a little short
I'm
story, so
sorry.
I'll,
I'm
oh,
sorry.
go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
I'm
June.
sorry. I haven't got anything to add. I was
Oh, okay.
looking for
Okay,
some
so you,
topics. But I've
okay.
been enjoying myself so far. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. Okay, well, I guess I'm next on the list, and I have a little short story that really isn't about Father's Day, but anyway, it's from my latest book, and Althea, you probably didn't read that one yet. It's called Granny Visits Toronto. Motilal,
Okay.
you can identify because you were just here last year. Anyway, Granny visits Toronto. Granny pack up all she panty on top of all the other clothes in the grip to put off the customs from finding the tamarind balls she hid below. She was going to visit her daughter in Canada. It was her first trip abroad and she was so excited. For months she telling the neighbor and them, "I'm going foreign to see Shahina. She sent me a ticket to come by she." When Granny landed up in Toronto, she had a lady customs officer who just happened to be originally from Trinidad. She hold up her panty and say in a loud voice, "Oh ho, long time I ain't see flower bag drawstring panty like what my gran used to wear. It bring back so many memories." Granny was so embarrassed. Although when she looked around, nobody was even taking them on. Granny gone by Shahina house. It was a small bungalow in a nice subdivision in the Scarborough part of Toronto. It had a tiny garden full of flowers, an apple tree and cherry tree in the back. She take a good look around. "But Shahina, you live in comfortable here, girl. You have everything. It don't look like you missing Trinidad at all." "I just miss home when it get cold," Shahina said. "And the rat race to take the subway to work and come home every day does get tiring. Toronto getting too big." Granny had arrived in early September when the weather was still warm. Shahina fixed it so on purpose, so by the time it getting cold in a month, Granny go be sure to go home. She knew her mother well. If given a chance, she could quite easily outlast her welcome. It's only the cold that would chase she back home. Well, every day Shahina carrying Granny all about the city sights. They go on downtown Eaton Center, go on to see Casa Loma, pass by the Royal Ontario Museum, the Science Center, Kensington Market, and more. Shahina even take time off from work and carry she on a bus trip to Niagara Falls. Granny having the time of she life. Granny was thrilled to see so much a roti shop all over the place. Man, I was not expecting to see wheat food all around, so she said. I have to sample some. Shahina buy some for she. Granny well enjoy it, but she had to find a little fault nonetheless. Too much of salt, girl. Hand heavy with salt. Shahina could not take the whole month off. She only get 2 weeks. So the last 2 weeks she leave Granny home alone on her work days. Granny used to lock up the house in the afternoon and walk over by the strip mall across the road to see what the stores have. She enjoys this little bit of independence, using her time and friendly manner to chat up people in the coffee shop. Where you say you're from originally? She asked a colored woman. Oh, Grenada. I from Trinidad. I visited my daughter who live in here 20 years now. Is only the black people friendly, the white people standoffish. Good afternoon, she greeted everybody as she entered the place. The whitey only watched she and gone back to their business. Only the colored people replying, good afternoon. Give me a tea with 3 sugar, she tell the clerk, watching around to see where she go sit down. Grammy well make herself at home, getting into a routine and making friends. She feeling like she could live here in foreign full time. She even eyeing a colored gentleman whose wife long dead, trying a little sweet talk by he. And he seemed to warm up to she too. Things going good for Granny. Then one afternoon towards the end of her stay, Granny gone by the coffee shop as usual. It was a little cloudy, so she put on a sweater Shahina leave for she. She spent so long liming with the old people there, she ain't noticed the weather change. A cold wind blowing from Lake Ontario and some rainfall. Then the rain hitting the glass window hard like pellets, and the ground looking shiny. Granny ain't always freezing rain. When she get up to go home, she's slipping like Bambi on ice in the Disney film. She not able to walk with her usual waddle and whine. Meanwhile, Shahina come home from work. Ma, you there? She call out. Where the damn woman gone now? She look out the kitchen window. What greet her was a sight. There was Granny crawling up the incline of the driveway on all fours. Shahina let out one loud laugh. When Granny reached the back step and hauled herself up, is one set of quarreling. What the ass country is this? I ready to go home now. How they expect people to walk on this thing? She cried out, embarrassed at the fact that her humiliation was clearly visible to all the people in the coffee shop. She had provided them with a real show. Even the white people were laughing at her. Now she going home for sure, Shahina whispered under her breath. Granny land back home quiet, quiet. When the neighbor and them see she in the yard, inquire, how you make out in foreign? How Shahina doing? Granny try and brighten up. She doing good, but you know how young people does get used to anything. I too old to live there. Life too hurry. And it's the cold I can't stand. Me with my rheumatiz. Well, it's nice to see you home. Anything exciting happened to you? Another neighbor asked. Well, you know how it was a miracle when Christ walked on water? Well, I walk on water too. Hard water, ice. I tell you, never me again in foreign. I good here. Of course, she leave out the part where she had to crawl up by the house on her hands and knees. And that spelled a quick end to Granny's adventures in foreign. The end.
I always like how you read it. That Trini slang, if you want to call it that. You can actually, yeah, you actually envision that it is happening right here, and they're actually talking about it, and you could see yourself in the whole drama. I enjoy the way you read it.
No, they have no Trinis living where I live in. I live in a very small town.
Yes.
In behind God back, I say. So, like a lot of my Trini slang is dated from,
Yes, of
when I.
course, of course, of course.
but I
But
like to
I
indulge
I
myself.
always enjoy the way you read. Mm.
So Althea, that is a little preview of some of this stuff.
I love the ending about her comparing herself to Christ, walking on water. It's a great way to end the story.
Well, you know, technically she was wrong, but
Well,
you know, people like us that, you know, you, Frank, people that live overseas like us, we could identify with walking on ice.
Yeah,
well,
that's
yeah.
for real,
I-
because that is something that I have never experienced, so I cannot relate to it at all. You
Well, you
know.
know, at my age, I find that I'm scared of it now because you can really fall and hurt yourself.
Yeah.
And when you're not
Yeah.
as agile as the younger people, you know, you could break bones, you can, yeah, it could be deadly. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Now
envisioning
I
Granny
try
just
not to go
walking on
out
her
when
hands and
it's,
feet, that is really hilarious.
but you know, I had an aunt that had a little canteen on Park Street in Port of Spain, but she left and she went to Toronto in the 1950s. But that story is based on her. She did that in her driveway when they had ice on the freezing rain,
Wow.
and she came home. And she
Wow.
had that is a family story. She crawled up the driveway on her hands and knees. So I took that little thing from that family story. So
Nice, nice.
now we got like 45 minutes and we're all read out. So I don't know if there's anything else. Now, I'm not sure if Leanne wants to chime in or she just wants to observe. Leanne?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm enjoying all the presentations. Unfortunately, today I'm not feeling so well, so I don't have anything to share, but I think everyone did a great job with their poems, and I enjoyed your story just now too.
Well,
yes.
I hope that you'll visit us again and tell us more about the magazine that you founded. Is it going to be online?
Yes, please.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
it's online. I'm looking forward to visiting more often and also contributing also to the session.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
And
Thank you.
are you going to have any kind of forum that we can kind of contribute some of our work to, perhaps? Have you thought about that yet?
Well, I do want to do a magazine this year that is about literature. So perhaps there would be opportunities to collaborate via guest columns or anything like that. That can be a possibility, but I'll have to keep you posted about that.
Sure.
Yes, yes.
Well, I must commend you on taking this on. It's a it's a big undertaking.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. Motilal and I do write for the My Trinidad online publication, so we kind of, you know, we're contributors to that kind of thing as well. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's put out by well, Tony DL was the founder, but now I think it's Johnny Comansing who's in charge of it. Yeah.
Well, I do
So,
love to read, so I'll ask Gersh if she can send me some copies of your work so I can read it as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So Heather, as I mentioned to you before we started, that I finished a manuscript of a nonfiction.
Right.
Well, it might turn out to be a novella on an aspect of depression, and it has nothing to do with Father's Day. But I can read a short excerpt from the introduction to the book.
Well, that would be good, yeah, because the one that the chapter 1 that you sent me, I found fascinating. I don't know if you remember that, but it was when Joe came in for his diagnosis.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll
sure.
just read a short portion of the introduction, and I changed the title. The title is How to Screen for Depression. Sorry, How to Screen for Depressive Symptoms in 3 seconds.
Okay.
And this part of the introduction. A well-educated and accomplished golfing buddy asked me, while on the golf course, a question in reference to a common acquaintance. He said, "So what stress does he experience to make him receive a medical diagnosis of depression? And why can't he just snap out of it?" My friend wasn't aware of the difference between depression as an English word versus depression as a disease process. He wasn't poorly informed, but he demonstrated an unawareness held by many lay persons not versed in medical terminology. It is normal to feel depressed, maybe disappointed on occasion. However, not all people experience the disease called depression. The English word depression refers to a state of sadness with feelings of gloom and inadequacy, a plight we all experience from time to time. However, within the medical field, depression as a disease refers to as major depression, a condition in which something in the human physiochemistry that is broken as a result, resulting in illness. It results in a multiplicity of signs and symptoms, both physical, what we call somatic, both physical and mental. Because of the biochemical nature of depression as a mental illness, it is not different from other physical diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure, or kidney failure. The same abnormal biochemistry applies to other mood disorders like bipolar disease, cyclothymia, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, major depression, and others. Therefore, physicians do not think of depression as a mental disease versus a physical illness. They could both be thought of as physical maladies. There is a derangement of the chemical reactions within the pancreas that causes diabetes. Likewise, there is a derangement of the chemical reactions in certain parts of the brain, as the amygdala and hippocampus and others, that makes one susceptible to clinical depression given certain triggers. One cannot just snap out of diabetes. So too, one cannot just snap out of depression. The causes of depressive illness are complex, and therefore a full treatise about the causes and treatment of depression is beyond the scope of this book. Some people may have the genetic inclination for developing these biochemical derangements causing depression, but never come down with the disease. They may lead normal and productive lives. If certain triggers occur, then depressive illness can manifest itself. Let's consider a perfectly healthy, non-depressed individual who may be genetically susceptible to depression, say through a family history of the disease. He is rear-ended in a car accident and develops a whiplash injury. He can develop clinical depression with the accident being the trigger, a trigger that produces the signs and symptoms of medical depression. Such signs and symptoms are feeling downhearted, worse in the mornings, crying spells, sleep disturbance, changes in appetite, weight loss or weight gain, gastrointestinal disturbances like constipation, fast heart rate, fatigue, exaggerated pain responses, experiencing a muddled mind, can't think straight, decreased motivation, restlessness, feeling hopeless, short-tempered, indecisive, feeling of low self-esteem, life feels empty, thinking about death and may even be suicidal, and a diminished enjoyment in life as a whole. In fact, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disease, used as a guide in the classification of mental conditions, does mention subsyndromal depression. That is patients who really do not satisfy the diagnostic criteria for depression. They are persons that are what I categorize as subsyndromal. Those are people who don't really have frank depression, but they may have a few symptoms of depressive illness. So I call them subsyndromal. So clinical depression presents within a range of severity and number of these signs and symptoms, from mild illness to having characteristics, to mild afflictions, to moderate to severe disease. And during everyday encounters in the medical setting, we see patients within the range of severity of the depressive spectrum. Symptoms can vary in severity and number from subsyndromal to mild to severe depression. And subsyndromal depression refers to a person who may have between 2 to 5 depressive symptoms, but who is quite functional in his life. However, the subsyndromal state may render him susceptible to coming down with frank depression, given triggers as mentioned above. So a family practice office is taxed with full waiting rooms. Patients in the seat next to you may have complaints that are quite different from the other, unlike that of the waiting area in a specialist office. All the patients in a gynecologist's office are basically there for disease in one area of the body. All those in an orthopedic office are there for bone and joint issues. But in a family practice waiting area, it bears an assortment of issues: boils, diabetes, foreign body in the eye, somebody needing a medical and physical, a twisted ankle, high blood pressure, someone needing a pap smear, child's vaccination, sleep disturbance, poor school performance, and an endless variety of complaints and needs. So it is easy in a fast-paced office to miss a patient with depressive symptoms. Easier yet to miss a patient with depressive symptoms not severe enough to call depression, but which is significant enough to affect the patient's physical complaints, as in subsyndromal depression. So a patient might present with constipation resulting from mild depression. However, this association of depressive symptoms presenting with constipation requires an astute clinician who, after assessing the whole patient, that is, his physical and mental status, work and home situation, and a myriad of other factors, will conclude that the underlying causation is a mood disorder. Anyway, what the book is about is developing a simple diagnostic maneuver in the physical exam to detect the early stages of depression. So I have discovered through 40 years of practicing clinical medicine that eliciting pain on firm palpation over the tip of the 7th cervical vertebral spine, that's right in the back of the neck, there's a bump, correlates with a patient having depressive symptoms. This sign is not only positive in depressive patients, but in those with pre-depression as well. It is not a diagnostic sign. In other words, if you have that positive pain, it doesn't mean you have depression, but it's a screening test. Some of my colleagues who have used this maneuver in their patient encounters call it the Mohan sign. The tip of the 7th cervical spine is called a vertebral prominence. In medicine, so I think I'll stop there. It's simply an introduction to what the book is about using this one specific physical sign that takes 3 seconds to elicit, that can screen for people with depressive symptoms. And those people who don't have depressive symptoms do not have that pain on that tip of that spine I mentioned. So I'm writing this, I wrote this manuscript to address the layperson as well as professionals to introduce this as part of the physical exam in everybody. So anyway, I've just sent it off to the publisher, and he has yet to read it and make me make thousands of changes. I see Heather shaking her head. I know she was a victim of that.
Well, I never recovered, boy.
Frank?
So what I did was I got my husband to teach himself the KDP program to upload, and I'm just doing my own thing.
Heather?
What?
There's a comment to Frank's piece there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Frank, that's a very authoritative. I like the authoritative voice, and I take in everything you say on face value, right? You tell me the moon is black. I believe that, using that authoritative voice, and your articulation also of what you're talking about. Very impressive. One thing I want to ask, you mentioned it is nonfiction. Okay, right.
Yes.
You use the word novella. You say it may be a novella. I don't think you're thinking of it like that.
Just thinking of it in terms of length.
Right. Well, don't use the right. So novella is like a short fiction. So don't. I wouldn't recommend novella. Keep it as nonfiction.
Okay.
Yes. Keep nonfiction as the label for it. And if that is the introduction, that's a short introduction. The introduction I done yet, right?
No, that's just part of it.
That was it. Very impressive. So it should be a very informative work. And I like to another thing, your comparisons. When you talk about the faults in the pancreas causing diabetes, and the faults in the brain, what could happen to the brain, leading to depression, causing depression. And your continued comparisons of gynecology and orthopedics. Yeah. So I like your use of comparisons there. So you get a better idea of what depression is, and as opposed to other illnesses. Very good. So as I say, whatever you say in that book, I believe in, because your voice is very authoritative, and that's good, right?
Okay. Well, I hope that it's going to be more of a teaching expose than anything else.
Well, that is even better. That is nice, right? Very good.
Yeah.
So
are you hoping, Frank, that it will end up in like medical schools?
Well, it's addressing both the lay public and professionals. But I try to keep it as simple as and not using too much technicalities as possible. And wherever I use a technicality, I will explain it in lay terms.
What helps, as I said, is the comparisons. Your use of comparisons, because people understand diabetes, let's say, right? So when you start to talk about the brain, you could see, and I don't think the language is that over technical. From what the introduction, what you get in the introduction.
Okay.
So I wouldn't advise when your editor sends you back the manuscript, I wouldn't advise too many changes to the language. Okay.
Okay. No, that's thanks. That's good. I did use the word novella, and thanks for clearing that up. So I know what to do now.
Yeah.
It's going to be about 23,000 words.
Every time I try to talk, somebody.
Well, I had put
Yes, Althea.
Yeah, I'm glad that Krishna cleared that up, because that bit about you said you were writing a novella and then you started reading the medical stuff. So I was really confused at one point. So I was wondering, is this in the novel that you're writing, or so
Yeah.
he cleared that up. So you were saying something about the pain in your neck could be
Well,
a
that's
symptom of depression.
no, not symptom. When you do a physical exam, you
Yeah,
look at the signs. For example, when you feel the pulse, that's a
yeah,
sign. Pulse is irregular. That's a sign. It is not a diagnosis, because you can make a diagnosis just from feeling the pulse. But if you feel an abnormal pulse, it's a screening test to tell you, hey, something is wrong here. I better delve into
yeah.
this. So that's called
Okay.
a physical sign. Well, so far in
Okay.
the medical literature, there's no physical sign that one can elicit while doing a physical exam, that can
Okay.
indicate somebody may have depressive symptoms. So
Okay.
over the last 40 years in examining people, I've discovered that pain on that specific site, and I describe how to find that site in the book, but pain on that
Mhm.
specific site on firm pressing, we call it palpation.
Yeah.
Somebody says, ouch, what was that? In about almost 100% of the time, they may end up having depressive symptoms, and sometimes they wouldn't even know that they have these depressive symptoms until you ask them about it. And people
Yeah.
who don't have depressive symptoms, you can press as hard as you want, and they don't feel any pain.
Okay.
So I did a study through the University of Western Ontario to compare this with traditional ways of determining people with depressive symptoms. And the statisticians who worked on it with me, when I presented them with my numbers, they discovered that it has what is called in statistics a p-value of less than 0.01. And that means that it's statistically significant, that it didn't happen by chance when you feel this pain here. So
Okay.
that's a study which I did, and it was passed by the ethics committee of University of Western Ontario, so that I can go ahead and do the study. And
Yeah.
when I presented them with those numbers, that they came up with the fact that it is statistically significant.
Okay. Well, great research.
Okay. I think Cynthia wanted to say something, so I would say what I have to say after she makes her contribution.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
Thanks very much. Ooh, let me douse the tennis. Sorry. I was waiting. Well, I was waiting to say thanks very much, Frank, because I like the way to tell that you might be going into depression with that testing the back of the neck.
Yes.
I also had a short piece to read that I thought it isn't pertinent to that directly, but a part of it may bear upon if somebody is depressed. I got it from Facebook. It's very short, and I don't know if I can read it now or if Alicia wants to talk first. Alicia?
I'd say go ahead and read it.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. The piece is written by someone called Susan Arnold. I just saw it on Facebook, but it's kind of spoke to me. What really is love? My parents were married for 55 years. One morning, my mom was going downstairs to make Dad breakfast. She had a heart attack and fell. My father picked her up as best he could and almost dragged her into the truck. At full speed, without respecting traffic lights, he drove her to the hospital. When he arrived, unfortunately, she was no longer with us. During the funeral, my father did not speak. His gaze was lost. He hardly cried. That night, his children joined him. In an atmosphere of pain and nostalgia, We remembered beautiful anecdotes, and he asked my brother, a theologian, to tell him where Mum would be at that moment. My brother began to talk about life after death and guesses as to how and where she would be. My father listened carefully. Suddenly, he asked us to take him to the cemetery. Dad, we replied, it's 11 at night. We can't go to the cemetery right now. He raised his voice, and with a glazed look he said, don't argue with me. Please don't argue with a man who just lost his wife of 55 years. There was a moment of respectful silence. We didn't argue any more. We went to the cemetery. With a flashlight, we reached her grave. My father sat down, prayed, and told his children. It was 55 years, you know. No one can really talk about true love if if they haven't done life with a person. He paused and wiped his face. She and I, we were together in the good and in the bad, he continued. When I changed jobs, we packed up. When we sold the house and moved, we shared the joy of seeing our children become parents. Together we mourned the departure of loved ones. We prayed together in the waiting room of some hospitals. We supported each other in pain. We hugged one another each day, and we forgave mistakes. And then he paused and added, children, that's all gone, and I'm happy tonight. Do you know why I'm happy? Because she left before me. She didn't have to go through the agony and pain of burying me, of being left alone after my departure. I will be the one to go through that, and I thank God for that. I love her so much that I wouldn't have liked her to suffer. When my father finished speaking, my brothers and I had tears streaming down our faces. We hugged him and he comforted us. It's okay, we can go home. It's been a good day. That night I understood what true love is. It is more than just romanticism and sex. It's two people who stand beside one another, who are committed to one another through all the good and bad that life throws at you. So this was a contribution by Susan Arnold. And I just thought there was a lot of value in it because as Frank was just talking about depression, if somebody you love has died and you are really going through depression, this outlook that she explained here is really valuable. It's a way of looking at it which makes you realize that, well, perhaps it's better that I suffer than my mate. You know, I just thought I would like to share it with you.
Well, actually, that's a differentiation I made in this piece of work, in that simply feeling, not simply, but feeling sad, like in a loss, say during when you during a grief reaction, is normal. But there's an actual disease called clinical depression, which is different from feeling sad. We all feel sad once in a while, and especially like in a grief reaction where your loved one is dead. But there's the medical diagnosis of clinical depression, which is different to that normal depression that we all feel from time to time.
What I wanted to say, Frank, based on what you were saying, if I am understanding what you are saying, based on your years of experience and observation, you would have realized that this pain seemed to correlate with individuals that have depression. Am I getting that correct? Based on your observations?
Yes, that have yes.
Yeah. And so because some time ago, I was a friend of mine was doing a presentation on depression, and one of the things that came out, because over the years, people use the term depression loosely,
right?
And but something that would have kind of stood out was the fact that in recent times there have been a term called functional depression, where people get up every day, they go to work, they take care of their family, they joke with friends, they smile at everyone, they greet, and so. but inwardly, mentally, they are drowning in their own thoughts. They're not sharing anything with anybody. They're going through a lot of emotional issues, but they're not sharing it and they don't talk about it. And so they function every day, but yet their thoughts and their emotions are not in sync with what is being displayed. Is there such a thing?
Oh, yes. In fact, in the book, I mentioned that in one study I read, over 80% of patients who present in an office they don't realize it, but they present with the medical diagnosis of depression. They present with physical symptoms. And the physical symptoms such as constipation, back pain, abdominal cramps, and so on. And it behooves the clinician to realize or come to a realization that this person really is presenting with depressive symptoms, because people tend not to fess up, if you will, with emotional symptoms because of the stigma involved in it. People might think they are crazy, or they might be seeking attention or something like that. But the medical diagnosis of depression, which is a physical disease, they usually present with physical symptoms first, about 80% of the times.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and it's very important to ask the patient. They're not going to I use the word fess up. They're not going to volunteer psychological symptoms. You have to bring it out of them. And if you do this sign on the neck and it's positive, it's a way to. Many times somebody would come in for something. I'll say constipation, and I would do that sign, and it's positive. I would say, so tell me, you probably have problems falling asleep or staying asleep. Oh, yeah, I do. And you probably feel you don't have much motivation, and your libido is down, and you tend to stay in your room and avoid meeting people when you used to like meeting people. And I'd go on like that, and they say, yes. Did my wife call you to tell you that I had those things? I said, no, but and this way you can bring it out of them. And in family practice, actually, up between 20 and 56% of people coming into the office may have depressive symptoms and don't even realize that that's what they have. So it's important to focus on that when you're seeing somebody afresh.
I guess that's where the functional depression comes in, where you're just coping with everyday life situations and you don't really think you're depressed, but you have the depressive symptoms. So you're depressed, but you're functional.
Yeah.
Which is getting back to what Alicia was talking about.
And that's why in multiple places in the manuscript, I try to separate the regular English word depression, or feeling depressed, as opposed to the medical aspect.
Yeah, because that one is diagnosed. That's a diagnosis.
It's a specific disease.
Yeah, correct.
So, Frank, how do you address, I know there are tons of drugs out there for depression, but how do you address some of these symptoms?
Well, there are many therapeutic approaches other than drugs. Something as simple as regular exercise tend to help people with medical depression. So exercise, cognitive behavior therapy is another one, which a lot of physicians now are adept at. And then, it's part of the whole process. a mild antidepressant will also be part of the regime. So there's no one specific treatment. There's a multiplicity of things coming together to treat the patient.
Well, I wonder if an exercise like what we engage in, like writing, can help.
Yes, any diversion
Yeah, it's very therapeutic, eh?
is very
Writing.
therapeutic.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah.
You can create the world in your work that you don't have in your real life, and so you can live vicariously through your own writings, perhaps.
Yes. By itself, it may not be enough, but it will certainly add to the therapeutic regime.
Very good. So everything comes back to our poetry and prose group that way. Nice little segue there.
Because Cynthia has her hand up.
Yes,
Yes.
I've been waiting patiently to say that, well, I always talk to the Lord and say, Dear Lord, you know, I have no money and I have no health plan. So, what I have been doing for about the last 3 years, well, the last year in particular, is forcing myself to get up and go out and go to concerts and all that sort of thing, figuring, you see, I have this capacity to put myself on different levels. So you might see me out and smiling, but you don't know what is going on under that. Althea, you look puzzled, but it's true. I can push things aside, and Frank was talking about that. And I realized, well, if you can't go to a doctor, you can't pay the doctor, you don't have enough clinics, they make you feel worse. The thing to do is probably what I have been doing, and I've been feeling over better now over the last year, and going out more and working through it that way, you know.
Well, lack of motivation. You're showing a significant amount of motivation, but somebody in the throes of medical depression shows a complete lack of motivation, where they will isolate themselves in their home and not go out and not write and not do things that we all do on a daily basis to enjoy life and living. So what you're describing is a really great motivation.
Yes, I have the capacity to well, lean on the spiritual to some extent. I have a lot of good friends that I can talk to, and really and truly, beyond the last year, I was really just staying at home a lot and just not mingling. But I would keep in touch with people, you know, by WhatsApp and all that. But I can understand that people who do not have inner resources to depend on and use, you know, if you
Yeah.
don't have faith in God, if you don't have good friends, if you don't have those things, it would be much harder and you could really get into a clinical depression. But I like the way your book is going, and it will be of use, I can tell. So
Yeah, I hope that it'll be a how-to book. Not just a description, but a how-to.
So, Frank, do you, in the rest of the book, I mean, without giving everything away, but have you talked about some of the things that we're talking about?
Yes,
once
I used a lot of anecdotes to illustrate my point. Actually, clinical anecdotes to illustrate the points. So to make it.
No, but I mean, how we could address what we could do once we realize that we have depressive symptoms, what we could do to alleviate them, like I mentioned about writing and stuff like that. And, you know, that would not be a total cure. It's just one of the things that we could do. But do you address different things that we could do ourselves, like Cynthia
Yeah,
is doing?
I alluded to that, but
Mm.
I did mention in the introduction that this is not in this work, treatment and therapy and so on is not within the scope of the book. It's mainly describing how to screen for depressive symptoms by
Okay.
this in 3 seconds, which has never been described before.
Right.
Now, currently, if you go to a physician's office and they suspect you might have depressive symptoms, they'll take about 45 minutes to give you a questionnaire to fill out, and then it has to be assessed and interpreted and so on. All of that takes about 40, which family physician has 45 to 50 minutes to work on this in a very busy family practice office. And so this 3-second maneuver will help in honing in on people with depressive symptoms more quickly than having to take an hour to spend with the patient.
So, would it be weird if I went to my doctor and I said, "Look, could you poke the base of my neck?"
He wouldn't know about that. I did have this, the idea of this published in the Canadian Family Physicians Journal in 2006, I think.
Yeah.
But no, not many people know about this.
So it has to get in more medical journals then.
Yeah, and it's not something you go to complain about. 90% of people with this particular pain I'm talking about, they don't know they have it.
Okay.
And if you try to do it yourself, it's like tickling yourself. If you try to tickle yourself, you don't laugh. It's the same if you try to do this yourself, you can't get a positive or a negative. It has to be by somebody using the right technique. I described all that in the book.
Well, Frank, I have to come by you.
You're welcome.
We need more Franks all over Canada.
This is as opposed to, where I live, there's a railway line and a golf course, and people playing golf, the balls come along the railway line. So when I was working, I would come home getting dusk, I'd walk along the railway line, picking up these very expensive golf balls. And this old lady walked by and she was looking at me very suspiciously as if I want to commit suicide because I'm on this train line, just walking aimlessly. And she said, "Sir, are you okay? Are you okay?" I said, no, I'm just looking for these golf balls. And then about a month later, she happened to walk by and a golf ball came over from the golf course and it's under the car and the car is running. So I came out of the car and I, right near the tailpipe, and I was bending down by the tailpipe to reach this golf ball. And she happened to go by and said, "Sir, are you okay? Is everything okay? Are you okay?" I said, no, I'm just getting a golf ball. And what the technique was, about a month later, she happened to pass by and I was stringing a rope over a branch of a tree in my yard to make a swing. And she was convinced I was going to kill myself.
Yeah, that Franklin is a good story right
Oh
there.
my word! You had this woman in a bind. Every time she sees you, you seem to be doing something suspicious.
The whole neighborhood probably think, "Watch that guy! He's gonna kill himself."
That's a good episode for a little TV show.
Yes, your guardian angel. She turned up each time.
She probably going telling all her friends that man go to kill himself. That's funny. Well, it's been a very interesting session, this open mic. It's nice when we all bring our diverse pieces together and get the feedback. So Frank, it was really good of you to come up with that last minute. It made for a very interesting discussion.
Yeah. I'll keep up to date as to the progress of the manuscript.
Yeah. And then of course, once you publish the book, we have an author of the month.
Yeah.
On the new book, read parts of it. So that would be good. Well, we are just about it's 4:00 here, but it's 3:00. So we've had our session for this 2-week period. So our next meeting is in 2 weeks. I'm not sure what Goshen and Motilal have in store for us.
Gersha, we have to talk about getting this Ken McGugan and Samuel Selvern and so on set up the program.
She might be at work, even though
Oh,
she's still
okay.
here. She had to.
Yeah, on the
to be at
29th,
work.
I've been working with Gersha. There's a fellow here who is a very well-known non-fiction writer in Canada. His name is Kenneth McGugan, and I happened to be in the same grade high school class with him back in Quebec in 1963. And he was a personal correspondent and friend with Samuel Selvern when he lived in Calgary. So
Right.
he's written quite a bit, many pieces about him. So I asked him if he would join us in poetry and prose, and we can have a team covering Samuel Selvern, and then he can read some of his things about his relationship with Selvern.
Our next,
So-
and I think we schedule that for the 29th.
Right, yeah.
The
Okay.
next
Of this
meeting is
month?
actually the 29th of this
Yeah.
month.
Yes.
Okay.
So
So
what I'm,
that's okay.
we'll have to get
So
together.
we're taking, we take Father's, it kind of threw us when we had the in-person meeting, because it was kind of in the middle.
Yes.
And Father's Day, we'll have off, which is technically when this session was supposed to be. But if we didn't do this session today, it would have been 3 weeks without a session.
Mhm.
So we
Okay.
did the session today, and then we'll have Father's Day off, and we'll meet on the 29th for the Samuel Selvon
So
celebration. So we'll have a good 3 weeks to kind of promote that.
Well, that's
And-
good. Okay.
and prepare for it, because I need to tell him specifically what we need from him.
Yeah, Althea's wants to.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
we were sent some kind of manuscript. Is that the man's manuscript that
The
we were sent?
manuscript is coming up on July 6th. That's
July
our
6th.
author of the month for July 6th.
Yeah.
Jenny Lynn James, she's a friend of Cynthia that came to
Okay.
our last meeting, not the one before,
Yeah.
not the Indian Arrival Day, the one before. And she has quite a bit of work out on Amazon, but she was nice enough to send us an e-copy of one of her books. She asked if we read it, that we leave a review on her Amazon.
Oh. Okay,
Yeah,
so
or
that's
Goodreads or
what that
something to
was.
review
Okay.
it. And it would give
Okay.
us an idea as to her work. So we'll be looking at that and reading from that. I just will probably send you the page numbers instead of sending you the text.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I will look out for that as well. And I
Okay.
believe Mutila will be sending out the Selvon pieces because he has them.
Okay.
Or if other people have work of Selvon, please let us know. Because if you want to read something particular
Mm.
and you have a copy of the work already.
Right.
Okay.
Well, thank you everyone for today's
Thank you.
session, and thanks for all your contributions. And I guess we'll close and reconvene in 2 weeks.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Good
Right.
night,
Okay.
everyone.
Good night.
Good
It's
night.
9
Thank you
p.m.
for
here.
sharing, Pat.
Wow.
Heather. Thank you
Yes.
for sharing.
Yes,
All
take care,
right.
Thank you.
everybody. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.